Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I've got another one of my reports where I'm starting to focus in on specific companies and their exploration stories. And the reason that I'm doing that is I think that, for one, gold stocks are about to start getting much stronger. As you can see here on this beautiful gold chart, that it's showing a lot of strength. But the only ones that have moved so far are the big gold stocks, the major miners, the gold miners. The developers haven't really participated as of yet, and neither have the explorers. And I see that a lot of times I believe that the explorers are the most misunderstood, the most maligned, and the most underloved. And I think that, when you sort of batch them all together like that, like they are often, that you miss the forest through the trees, if you will. And so I have a group that I dig really deep into on their geology and their exploration efforts. And so I decided to start doing these more in-depth reports on individual companies. And today I have one of my sponsors that I'm going to talk about, which is Borealis Mining. But before I do those, I usually talk about gold in this case because, as you can see here, there was pretty big movement today. Actually, I'll zoom in so you can see the daily action with the Federal Reserve deciding to raise the interest rates. We got by 0.5%. We got a pretty big run in the price of gold. And then Chairman Powell came out and did his press conference and made the case that, oh, don't worry, everything's fine. It's Goldilocks economy and jobs market. And then gold got hammered down and then recovered towards the end of the day. Now I'll go to because the current US dollar is so important. So here's the US dollar. It's been on a pretty serious correction. It also had a big swing in the day. Initially, it was down quite significantly when they announced the 0.5 point, and then it rallied and then came off a little bit on the day. Ultimately, I think that this is a precursor of what we're going to see as the Fed has now entered into this rate cutting cycle. And subsequently, here is what I think we're going to see with the price of gold. Gold has been making higher highs and higher lows for several months. I commented back here about this sideways action, this basing period. And then as the base was sort of finishing, the range got quite a significantly amount tighter, and then it had a big burst. And I had predicted that it would get over that 2100 level, which it did quite nicely. Then there was another base here. This one was shorter in time frame and a little bit tighter, especially as you got towards the end of it. And then another blast off. And then recently, I had commented in my reports about another base. Now, this base, you're seeing sequentially that they're getting tighter in range. So they're not bouncing up and down that much, and shorter in duration, which is very bullish. And then we got another spike, another rally above 2,600. So everything is in very good shape with the gold market, and I think that the U.S. dollar is in for a lot of trouble. But I wanted to highlight my Twitter. This is my profile on Twitter, and if you're not following me, you can follow me at ALLANB reports, or at Allan B reports on Twitter. And on a day like today, I use the Twitter for two things. I update my audience that follows me on Twitter on there, and then I also make notes so that I have topics to talk about. So one of the first notes I made today was that I always hear Fed officials and former officials say that politics doesn't affect rate policy. I think that's a huge red flag because politicians create the massive debt that certainly should influence rate policy decisions. But the Fed likes that soundbite. I don't think it's true. If it is, I think it's economically foolish. And then the next note I made was when it comes to gold stocks, the most misunderstood. Oh, this was about my shows that I'm doing, and again, I think they're misunderstood, maligned, underloved, and yet it's really important that you have in the mining business exploration success because those are the projects that then go into development and can be the new mines that replace the old mines. So if you don't have exploration discovery success, then that whole chain, that whole supply chain starts to break down. And that's why I am starting to do these exploration focus shows. Okay, they say the Fed says that politics doesn't affect their rate policy. That will get tested today because the politicians are battling over funding the government, which brings up the potential for a government shutdown later this month. And this could have an influence on a quarter point or a half point move. And I think that's part of the reason why they went with a half a point. It was more expected that it would only be a quarter of a point, but they went with a half a point. They didn't say anything about the possibility of a government shutdown, but I think that and the combination of their next meeting is not until after the election. So you have several weeks between meetings. And so I think that was a bit of a troublesome issue. The Fed may, and then I announced that, posted that the Fed may have to bite the bullet and go with the half a point due to the threats of a government shutdown and 6 weeks until the next meeting. And then this post was made shortly after the announcement was made, but before Federal Reserve Chairman Powell had his press conference. And this was a bit of a shout out to my Canadian followers. The US index is heading towards a Gretzky. His number was 99. And then an Eric Lindros, which was his number was 88. And meanwhile, gold is continuing on the higher highs and higher lows trend, making new record highs on each rally. And I said, giddy up gold. And then before the Fed press conference, I said, I highly doubt that the Fed will say they cut because they are worried about the jobs market and the economy, but that is the real reason. The half point decision was likely because the politicians are threatening government shutdown and they have several weeks before the next meeting and they had to bite the bullet. The reason they have that could have been the ultimate decision maker, but the real decision maker is the jobs market. As anyone who's been reading my reports knows, I've been talking a lot about the jobs market, and that's indicating that the economy is slowing much more significantly. While Chairman Powell was doing his press conference, I made some notes. I was quite surprised that he opened with, the economy is strong and the jobs market is good. Later, I make a point about that. He said that they are decreasing their balance sheet. Yeah, right. I think that's a total BS. They said they were going to normalize it in the past. all they could do was get it from around 9 trillion to not even below 7 trillion. I don't believe any of the rhetoric about their balance sheet. Powell says that jobs are cooling. So why switch policy? If the jobs are cooling, that means that inflation should be okay. So why bother switching? But nonetheless, Powell basically is declaring victory over inflation. I posted that another BS moment for the Fed when Powell mentions the paper poll. So at the Fed meeting, they do this poll of all the members saying where they think that interest rates should be. And they say that the poll suggested that they see 4.4% for the Fed rate. I think it's going a lot lower than that. I'm always surprised when I hear these press conferences after the Fed meeting that the reporters rarely do they ask the most pressing questions, such as if the Fed thinks they have lost some, asking why didn't they ask if the Fed has lost some credibility and are behind the curve? I think that's exactly what's happening here. I also noted Powell's comments that the economy and jobs market are fine is not going to age well. Basically, after cutting by half a point, Powell went with the Goldilocks pitch. Everything's fine, don't worry, which begs the question, if everything is just right and consensus was for a quarter point cut, why did they go with a half a point? The reason is clear. The jobs market is worse than expected based on the inflated numbers out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics that needed to be revised downward dramatically, and they likely still didn't come clean. His Goldilocks pitch will not age well. And then there was, well, just after the press conference, Jeffrey Gundlach says that he thinks that September 2024 will be when the recession has been recognized as starting. A main part of his argument is that the weakening in the full-time jobs and increase in part-time jobs are a big issue. That's why I've been writing about it a lot lately. And when combined with the BLS revisions, suggests that the jobs market is weak and signaling a recession. He also emphasized that the word of the day is artificial, which is the word that Powell used when it comes to the BLS jobs numbers. So he's basically saying that those numbers are not accurate, that they're all artificial, and that the Fed members are taking them with a grain of salt. They don't trust the BLS numbers and are adjusting them mentally when considering rate policy. And as Jeffrey Gundlach was saying this, it really struck me that what he is basically describing is stagflation. If the economy is in recession and inflation is still, even at their stated rate of 2%, that means you have stagflation. So, and that's a win-win for gold. Now, I reposted Sven Henrich's comment that in September 18th of 2007 was the last time they moved 50 basis points, just before the 2008 economic crisis, the great financial crisis. And then on September 18th, 7 years later, they've done it again. I think he's trying to make the point that, there's a tough situation coming. Daniel Lacalle, he said that, he was commenting to Walter Bloomberg, who said, Powell, economy is strong overall. And then Daniel said, that is why he slashes rates. So he's not believing that rhetoric. And then here you go. The Fed has maintained steady interest rates for the past 12 months. This last happened right before the 2008 financial crisis. And back then, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke expressed regret for not cutting rates sooner. So people are starting to make the argument that they got to be pretty careful here. This is a fine line they're trying to draw, and that's going to be pretty challenging. And so, having said all this, I believe gold is, as I've said for since earlier this year, that it was heading for a major breakout above 2100 and then would make a series of record highs, which is exactly what has happened. It's on a very bullish trend of higher lows and higher highs. And I think we're going to go into overdrive between here and the end of the year that gets us to 3,000, or it will be in early 2025 that we see that move. Okay, so now I'm going to get into Borealis Mining. And when I introduce Borealis Mining, I make the case that Borealis is the best prepared private company that is transitioned to a public company set up for success. What I'm trying to make with that statement is the argument that they are built for success like I have never seen in my 30 years in the mining business, in a company that's gone from the transition of a private company to a public company. And so here is, this is powered by Verify. They do great work, by the way. I highly recommend you check out their website. But here is the site overview. And what I can show you here is this is one of the old pits on the property. There's another one here, and there's a couple more behind there. Freedom Flats, I'm just going to zoom in here. Freedom Flats was the largest pit that they had and the highest grade. And I want to point to some interesting things here. You can see quite a bit of alteration here on the pit wall. There's more of it over here, down here, and this point I'm going to make, I'll make it later, but keep these alteration in your mind. And I think that they will probably look at extending this pit because there is some alteration above the pit on the surface over here, and lots of alteration here. So I think that could be a possibility. Then you go over here is the ADR plant. So this is where they process the historical production, process into gold, the heap leach material into gold doré. As you can see, there's part of the ADR plant. Some of the pond or settling situations there. They produce gold bars. Okay, so let's get out of the ADR plant, and I'm going to zoom out here. And so the next thing I would point out is the heap leach pad. So what you're seeing here is the heap leach. Now, some of this material has already been, the cyanide has been poured on it, but some of this, they recently announced that they produced about 200 ounces of gold from getting it from some of this area that had not been or had been treated, but could be treated some more. And, that's a significant amount of money that, just came with the project. $500,000. There's a lot of juniors out there these days that are struggling to raise $500,000. They were able to pull about that much worth of money out of the heap leach pad. So I'm going to zoom out again. So I think you can see it here a little bit better. So I'm going to zoom in here. So after at the bottom is where you leach out the material, then it makes its way over to the ADR plant from here. Now, another interesting part about this is, I'm going to zoom into that heap leach pad again. And over here, you see stockpiled material. And again, that's pretty, that's oxide material, significant amount of alteration. So they'll crush this material. First, they're gonna process this area that had not been had not been leached yet. And then they're going to start crushing and putting that material onto the pad and recover the gold from there as well. Okay, so let's get out of here. And I'm going to go back up to the North Ridge pit. Here we go. So again, here you can see on this North Ridge pit, look at all this alteration that's popping up all over here. Why that's important for the non-geologists out there is that when the metals-bearing fluids make their way to the surface and then interact with the country rock, they chemically alter that rock, okay? And so here you can see leftover alteration over here as well. Here's the East Ridge and the Gold View. This is just a very tiny pit. But I think that there's potential that more of this could be processed as well. I'm going to zoom out again, and then you can't see it, but there's one more pit in the background. There was 4 pits. So you had Freedom Flats, the biggest, the highest grade, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4 is up there. It's small as well. So now I want to zoom out and point out some interesting. So here you see a really big alteration area. And so, you know, that's what these things look like prior to them being open pits. And you saw the alteration that's more intense under the surface, but these are high priority targets. Now, I'm going to zoom out a little bit further. Actually, I'm going to switch over to Google Earth here. And I'm going to go to, where is it here? Borealis Mine. Double click on that. Okay, so now we can use Google Earth to talk more about a zoomed out picture from what you could see on Verify there. So here's the lineup of the pits, and they all strike along a fault. In fact, the fault goes right through that. Another thing that I would point out from this picture is look at all this alteration, all in here, all over here, all the way out here. Now, this is where the rocks are outcropping. But here's an important point, that those same rocks, they go out here to what's covered alluvial cover. And those same rocks are what's under this thin cover is highly prospective, because as you can see here, this Freedom Flats pit is out in that alluvial cover. And it's basically just an extension of this. This in here was an alteration area associated with a fault. So that really opens up this probably 2 times the area of what you can see in alteration. And this is one of the largest untapped alteration zones in all of Nevada. A couple other things that I would point out is that you can see structures that cut through the alteration. Very important, because for the metals bearing fluids to make their way up to the surface from deeper down, they have to have a conduit or a path of least resistance, if you will, and that's what they follow along. And so the structures, the alteration, the open potential of what's underneath this covered area make this for a spectacular exploration target. Now, most of the drilling historically from when the mining was happened long time ago, in the 1980s, I believe. And they were mainly focused on these pits that they wanted to produce gold from. Most of this area, all in here, and then all out into the alluvial covered area, have very minimal drilling. So it's all wide open. So I wanted to give you an idea of how I use Google Earth. And when you can see such a big footprint of alteration, there's an old saying in mining, and it's a good one, and has stood the test of time, which is that big systems leave big footprints. And that is a very big footprint. And that footprint probably extends well out into this alluvial covered area that has seen no exploration. Very minimal drilling up in here, maybe a half a dozen to a dozen type holes. There are some smaller pits that you can't see here that they drilled to produce on. So now I want to go to their corporate. Oh, let's start out on their main page of their website. Folks, by the way, I always recommend people to do their own homework. Part of the reason that I'm doing these digging deeper into exploration company stories is I also wanted to show you about how I go about doing my homework. And a lot of that is to go to their website, check out their corporate presentations. Some companies have these verify websites. That's good information. I even go the step further by using Google Earth to zoom in on the projects that I'm looking at to see the evidence that I can see from Google Earth. But let's talk a little bit about the board and management. Now, this company has only been trading for about 5 weeks now. And before they became a publicly traded company, they were able to get a who's who of mining on their board of directors, which they could go and be on the board of directors of practically any gold mining company, but they chose to go into this tiny private mining company that now has been publicly traded for about 5 or 6 weeks. And here's a good comment from Kelly Malcolm. He talks about Rob McEwen holding 16% of the company. I'll get into that a little bit later. So Kelly Malcolm, I've known Kelly for many years. He was the VP of Exploration for Amex Exploration from the time of their initial discovery until about a year or so ago. And when he made the decision that he wanted to take on a C-suite position and build his own company, they found a lot of gold at Amex Exploration. I think it's going to prove to be a mine of the future that's a multi-million ounce a mine of the future. And now, actually, I'm going to do a one of these reports on them as well. While he was there, they raised $90 million. They were the exploration company of the year at the Mines and Money Show. He was also involved in the discovery and delineation of Detour Gold's high-grade 58N gold deposit. And then he talks about being his degrees in geology and a BA in economics. Tony McCooch is a stellar person to have as the chairman. He was the president, CEO, and director of Kirkland Lake Gold. He built that company from a small junior miner into a $14.5 billion takeover. Tony is a very talented guy. The Kirkland Lake merged with Agnico Eagle in 2022. By the way, Agnico Eagle is my top gold mining pick. Prior to Kirkland Lake, he was the CEO at Lakeshore Gold. Now, I have good memories of Lakeshore Gold because it was one of my picks many years ago. Then it got bought out by Tahoe Resources in 2016. He's CEO of Discovery Silver, executive chairman at Wallbridge, professional engineer, earth sciences, MSc in engineering, and an MBA. Really very talented mining executive. Bob Buchan. Bob Buchan is the founder of Kinross Gold, which is a mid-tier to large gold mining company. It grew into the third largest primary gold producer in North America. Then he retired in 2005. He was the founder of Katanga Copper, the developer of one of the world's largest copper deposits. He holds a degree in mining from Heriot Watt University in Edinburgh, Scotland, and an MSc in mining engineering from Queen's University. Bob Buchan is another who's who in the mining business. Greg Gibson, he's currently the president of G6 Energy, was previously the CEO of Sprott Mining Company and Jarrett Canyon Gold. They actually sold that to First Majestic. He has more than 30 years experience in the mining industry as a mining manager, director, CEO, and president. Greg's experience has focused on gold and copper mines, primarily Canada, US, and Australia. He's successfully led Trelawney Mining and Exploration as president, CEO, and director from an early explorer to its $608 million sale to IM Gold in 2012. Another very talented mining guy. Richard Patricio is currently a director at NextGen Energy. NextGen Energy has by far the best uranium development project in the world. And he's the president and CEO of Mega Uranium. So Mega Uranium owns a big chunk of NextGen Energy. And they're a diversified uranium mining and investment company with interests in uranium assets of various forms. Mr. Patricio has built a number of mining companies with global operations and held senior officer and directors positions in several companies listed on stock exchanges in Toronto, Australia, London, and New York. He has a law degree from Osgoode Hall and was called to the Ontario Bar in 2000. Another very talented guy. Christina McCarthy, some of you may remember Christina because her company that very quickly she built from a brand new company into a takeover in a matter of, I think it was like 16 months or something like that. Prior to building that, she was a director of corporate development for McEwen Mining. So she's worked closely with Rob McEwen. She also did equity research at Euro Pacific. That's names leaves me right now, but one of the biggest gold bugs in the world, and institutional sales at Haywood Securities. Now, Andreas Steckenborn is not, a well-known name amongst mining investors, but he has a very good background. He developed and improved large-scale mines across North America. He was a senior advisor to IM Gold on the Cote Lake autonomous startup. So using modern technology to mine, using electric vehicles and being operated remotely. Previously, he was the senior engineer at the Detour Lake Mine. That's actually where Kelly and Andreas got together. So they are the nucleus of what started Borealis Mining. And so they originally worked together at the Detour Mine. So he was the senior engineer for the Detour Lake Mine and Western Detour Mine Extension. He joined Detour Gold in 2011. It was evolved from mine startup through continuous improvement, resulting in an eventual sale to Kirkland Lake Gold. And Mr. Steckenborn is fluent in Mandarin, French, and English. So Kelly is the exploration guy. Andreas is the mine builder operator guy. And then Ian Campbell is a professional geologist. He was also involved at the Detour Lake Mine, where he worked his way up the ranks to senior resource geologist. So that's his real focus, is on resource definition and definition and growing, and also how that applies to mining. He was part of the team that created the current grade control model, which increased mine revenue by more than $100 million over 4 years and led to the takeover by Kirkland Lake Gold. And that was subsequently sold to Agnico Eagle Mines as their flagship asset and largest gold mine in Canada. Ian holds a BSc in geology and certification in advanced geostatistics. So this is where you get into the resource definition, growth, and how to cycle that into a mining operation. So as you can tell, this is a pretty enviable board of directors that has major mining company experience from small junior to major mining, and 3 really talented young guys in Kelly Malcolm, Andreas Steckenborn, and also Ian as the nucleus of what is the operations. And then they get their advice from the board of directors with people such as Tony McCooch and Bob Buchan on it. All right. So now what I wanted to do is I want to go to their corporate presentation because there's some really cool information in there. So let's click on the corporate presentation and we'll start moving our way through it. So there's the forward-looking statements. They give you the general highlights: top rated mining jurisdiction, 100% owned, high grade, underexplored, top tier team. And that top tier team doesn't just include the management team, which is basically Kelly and Andreas and Ian. Then they got that great board of directors, but then they got a strong shareholder base, which includes Bob Buchan is a shareholder. I believe Tony McCooch is as well. They bought in as a private company. So did Eric Sprott, and so did Rob McEwen. Now, how the Rob McEwen investment came about was very interesting because Rob was there was a presentation done with Rob about the project. Very quickly, he decided that he wanted to take out. Borealis got this project from Waterton, and Waterton has a reputation because they are closing their fund that they tend to pretty aggressively sell stock in juniors that they've got them from to sell them their projects. And so Rob wanted to take out Waterton completely. He did when Borealis was private, and now he owns 16% of the company. So Rob is a legend in the mining business, as is Eric Sprott, as are some of the guys on the board of directors. So this is not an understatement to say a top tier team. Here you get the corporate structure. So 83 million shares, 28 of that is escrowed for 36 months, 13 is escrowed for 18 months. They got 16 million warrants. Those are, I think, all in the money. So that would be another form of raising money. There are some broker warrants and $65 million market cap. Insiders have 14% of the company, so they definitely got skin in the game. Rob McEwen has 16%. Institutions own 31%, and 39% is in retail hands. And of this, a good portion of what's over here is what is held in escrow. There's the board of directors. I already talked about that. Permitted heap leach, gold mine, and processing facility. A lot of developers, before they can go into production, they got to get their permits. They got to get the mine built. They've got to get it operation. Borealis comes out of the gate not needing any of those things. So they can fast track the cash flow and use that cash flow to fund their development and their operations, and thus keep the share structure nice and tight. Significant in situ historical resources. Now, of course, historical resources comes with that warning that they are not 43-101 compliant. And so more work needs to be done in order to bring that up to compliance. But it does indicate that there's a pretty significant resource of 1.8 million ounces of gold at a grade of 1.28 grams per ton gold. Inferred resource of 195,000 ounces of gold and at a 0.34. So this would be open pit type stuff. And it's permitted mine, operations, ready to use heap leach pad, ADR facility, and a mobile fleet. This all came as part of the acquisition. And Kelly, Malcolm, Andreas, and Ian, they pulled off a coup here. They were able to get this project off of Waterton because Waterton was divesting themselves of all their mining operations. They were able to get this for, I think it was like $300,000 or $400,000 in cash, and then when they would have owned 20% of the company when it went public. But because Rob McEwen bought that all off of them, they no longer own any shares. And so to get a project of this quality for that price, the timing was just perfect. And Ian and Kelly and Andreas did a heck of a good job. And then they talk about high-grade exploration potential. They're currently drilling 3,500 meters. They got a high sulfidation gold system with high-grade historical drill results. Now that's underneath that Freedom Flats pit, which again was their highest grade pit and the biggest pit. And look at what they hit, what has been hit in the past underneath in the sulfides. 67.1 meters of 16.2 grams, 115 meters of 4.5 grams, 96 meters of 5.3 grams. And that's sitting right beside a pit. And just normally, if you get those kind of results today, that would have been peppered with drill holes. But the reason it wasn't was because historically they were only interested in mining the oxides. They weren't worried about the sulfides below the oxides. And this is a phenomenal historical drilling results. Here they talk about it being 2 hours from Reno, 25 minutes drive from Hawthorne, in the best jurisdiction, accessible by highways, 14,000 acres, infrastructure, which includes electricity from the Nevada energy grid, permitted water. Water is an important thing, and a great location in the Walker Lane Gold Trend. Now, what's interesting about the Walker Lane Gold Trend is down here, I think it's about 80 kilometers away, is one of the greatest new discoveries that has happened in Nevada in decades for oxide deposits. Anglo is developing what they call their Merlin and their Silicon projects. That's all part of, well, that's two zones on one project near the old Bullfrog mine. And it's already they've only been drilling on it for 5 or 6 years, already over 15 million ounces of oxide. But what's interesting about that is the oxide is undercover. So it's a little bit of cover on top of the oxides, and they got underneath there and 15 million ounces of oxides. It's one of the greatest new discoveries worldwide for oxide gold, and it's not that far away from Borealis. And remember that verify model, so you can see where the pits lining up one after another. It was discovered in 1978. Now, what's interesting is the guy who discovered this in 1978 is now the geologist is now consulting to I-80 or to Borealis mining, and I know him, and he's a really talented guy. The initial production was from 1981 to 1990, with the reported 500,000 ounces in those open pits at a grade of 2.02 grams per ton gold from 8 near surface open pit oxide deposits. Now, just to put that into context, folks, some of the open pit oxide deposits these days are being mined at a half a gram. This is an order of magnitude larger in grade. You mine something like this today, and it would be an absolute cash making machine. There was also recent production in 2011 to 2013, and then in 2021 to 22, where 125,000 ounces was produced. Permits are in place, federal and state permits for mining and processing, and again, significant infrastructure. Here is a geological map. Here is the pits. There's the 4, and there's a couple little ones over here. And this map, I like this map because it shows you these structures that are associated with those open pits. Another one here, another one here, another one here, and a series over here, cross-cutting. There's also cross-cutting ones over here, and those are great conduits for the gold-bearing fluids to make their way to the surface. Here is some of the historical drill holes. There's that 67 meters of 16 grams. So what does that make it in gram meters? Like 700 gram meters, 115 at 4.5. So you've got another 500 gram meter. You get over 100, you get 100 gram meters, and that is considered something special. And in the highest quartile of what goes into finding mines. And so here you got a 96 meters of 5 grams, so close to 500 gram meters there. 67.1 meters of 6 grams, so you got a 360, almost 400 gram meters there. 58 meters at 6.5, so another 350 gram meters. 10 grams over 24, so 250 gram meters. And a lot of this has not been followed up, folks. All right. Now, here's some of the sampling that was done on the surface. As you can see, there's a whole bunch of kicks of gold mineralization all along here, over here, all the way along that alteration zone I mentioned earlier. Here are some of your faults in the green, and look at all the gold mineralization right beside that, and straddling that, straddling this one, straddling this one, straddling this one, straddling this one, straddling this one. This is not a coincidence, folks. And then you've also got cross-cutting structures coming across here as well. So they talk about no regional exploration on the project since 2008. This was Borealis Mining's sampling. Numerous undrilled high-grade grab sample targets. That's what they're talking about there. Numerous undrilled high-priority geophysical targets from historical IP, MAG, EM. Recently completed hyperspectral survey, LiDAR interpretation, prospecting and mapping, and they're currently drilling 3,500 meters. So this is sort of the crux of what's going on right now. I really like this map, high-grade resource expansion potential. So this shows you some of the grades that was in the pit. This is oxide open pit material, folks. 16.7 meters of 10 grams. Again, I put that into the context of open pit oxide deposits are being mined at 0.5 gram these days. So spectacular stuff up there. But then look at underneath the pit. 45.7 meters at 7.4 grams per ton of gold, ending in 7.3 grams per ton of gold. 25.9 meters of 3.4 grams per ton of gold. This is still open. This is still open. This is still open. This is all the historical drill holes that went into developing this pit into a deposit that they mined. This is their oxide target. Over here, you have the sulfide target. Now, this is the one. It's called the Graben deposit, and it's literally right beside that Freedom Flats pit that I talked about earlier. So, you know, you could have access to this sulfides from that pit, and that would give you really easy access. Again, look at some of these results. 41 meters of a gram, almost 2 grams. 67 meters of 6.1 grams. 67 meters is 16.2 grams, 56 meters is 6.5, 115 meters of 4.5. And this remains open in this direction, remains open in this direction. And I suspect that it could be open underneath here as well, or at least underneath here. And who knows what's over here. So that's called that's the highest priority sulfide target at this point in time. And again, folks, this is in that alluvial covered area right beside the biggest pit and the highest grade pit on the project. Now, when I was doing my homework, Kelly Malcolm provided me with this scientific paper that was written about this project. And it was quite shocking because, so here is the sulfide target, if you will, or sulfide zone. You can notice that there's only 2 holes into the sulfide zone. I think I can zoom in here a little bit for you so we can see those grades a little bit better. How do I zoom in? I didn't do it correctly. I want to zoom in. Sorry about this. Just give me a brief second. I might be able to figure out how to zoom. I can't, so I'm just going to tell you the numbers. So on this red hit here, 8.5 meters, just getting into the sulfide part of it, 4.5 meters, 1.3, 3.2 at 1.6, 3.2 meters at 1.6. And so, you're just in a very small portion of the sulfide zone. But then come over here and take a look at this. Here above the sulfides, you got 10.3 meters of 2.5 grams, 5.2 meters of looks like a gram and a bit, 2.5 meters of 4 grams, just as you're getting into the sulfide target. But then look at as you're down into it quite significantly. 29.4 meters of 6.3 grams. So that would get you into the just about 150 gram meters. Included in that was 2.3 meters of 41 grams. Never followed up, folks. Still wide open to keep drilling deeper into this system, and who knows what's over here. So again, great target. Kelly Malcolm calls this his favorite slide. As an exploration geologist, you don't get to be on a project of your own where they actually can pour gold. And this was one of the gold pours. I think it was from June 2023 or August 2023. They also did one in August 2024. That was about 200 ounces of gold, so about $500,000. To put that into context, and that was from residual leaching. And a lot of juniors these days, explorers, are struggling to raise $500,000. And so they also noted that they intend to introduce cyanide to fresh ore on the leach pad. I think they might be doing that right now. They want to also do crushing, stacking, and processing of the 330,000 tons of stockpile of oxide ore from the previous mining operations. So I showed you that earlier in the video, the stockpile. There's the ADR plant. There's some gold bars from 2023, and there's the presentation. So in closing, I want to sort of reiterate what I've been telling people for a while now when I talk about Borealis Mining. This company has been built from the ground up for success. They started out as a private company. They did a lot of great work. And now they, as of about 5 or 6 weeks ago, transitioned to be a public company. And to sort of wrap up what they did as a private company, they acquired a project that has permits, it's got exploration potential, it's got near-term production potential, it's got the potential to find a lot of deposits, and that's why they were able to get such a strong board of directors together and key shareholders like Eric Sprott and like their largest shareholder, Rob McEwen. When you see sort of that quality of people flocking to a junior, it tells you a lot about the quality of the project. I feel very fortunate that the company is a sponsor of my reports. I do some consulting for the company, and I wanted you to know about those biases. And part of what I do for sponsors is I create content for their benefit, but it is also for the benefit of my audience, because by having corporate sponsors, I can provide my content for free to my audience of subscribers to my reports. And so they also benefit from sponsorship. But I wanted to tell you all about these biases. Um, what companies that sponsor my work don't do is they do not pay me to form my opinions. They don't tell me when to put content out. They don't tell me what to put out. They have no editing rights over what I put out. And so my biggest bias, folks, is that whether I'm talking about a sponsor or a pick or the sector or the metals, I am biased because I have an opinion. I'm no different than anybody that has an opinion on any subject. I want to be right. And I do my homework and try to be right a lot more often than I'm wrong. And if you want to study how I do on that goal, you can go to my Substack at rocksandstocks.substack.com. You can go to my Twitter at Allan B Reports, or you can go to my YouTube at Rocks and Stocks News, and you can see for yourself how I do with my biased opinion on a variety of companies, both sponsors, non-sponsors, picks, and companies that I have on my radar screen as well as plus my commentary on the metals and all that sort of cool stuff. So on that note, you have a great day, and we will talk to you soon.